Mercedes-Benz spent $2.7 billion developing the W140 S-Class in 1991. It had 127 individual buttons. Each one cost thousands to develop. Each one worked perfectly for 30 years without fail. Today, that same car would cost $20 billion to develop and need to sell for $500,000 per unit just to break even. But here's the part nobody talks about. People would still buy it. The automotive industry knows there's massive demand for simple, reliable, overbuilt cars. They know we're sick of touchscreens that crash, engines that self-destruct at 60,000 miles, and cars that spy on us. So why won't they build them? Because the truth is much darker than incompetence. Today, I'm revealing the 10 legendary cars millions of Americans want back, what they'd really cost to build today, and the conspiracy keeping them dead forever. If you've ever wondered why your grandfather's Mercedes still runs after 40 years while your modern car needs software updates to open the trunk, you need to watch every second of this. Subscribe and hit the notification bell, because what you're about to learn will change how you see every new car forever. Let's start with the car that refuses to die, the Mercedes W123, specifically the 300D diesel. Between 1976 and 1985, Mercedes built 2.7 million of these tanks. Today, 40 years later, hundreds of thousands are still running daily. In Morocco, they're taxis with over 1 million miles on the clock. In California, they're family heirlooms passed down through 3 generations. This wasn't just a car. It was a promise that engineering could defeat time. The W123's secret was deliberate over-engineering. The door hinges were tested for 1 million open-close cycles. That's opening your door 100 times a day for 27 years. The OM617 diesel engine was so overbuilt that Mercedes engineers admitted it could run twice its rated power without damage. Every component was designed to last not just longer than the warranty, but longer than the owner. Now, let's calculate what building this today would cost. Start with the basics, that legendary OM617 engine. To meet current EPA Tier 3 emissions standards, you'd need selective catalytic reduction, a diesel particulate filter, and NOx sensors. Add $13,000. The overlapping steel construction that made it so strong doesn't meet modern NHTSA pedestrian safety requirements. Complete redesign, $27,000 per unit in development costs. But here's the real killer, the quality standard. The W123 used forged components where others used cast. It had brass bushings where others used plastic. The chrome wasn't just decoration, it was millimeters thick. To build a W123 to original standards today, with modern safety and emissions, the production cost would be $105,000. Mercedes would need to sell it for $155,000 to make their standard margin. And that's the tragedy. People would buy it. There's documented demand from over 50,000 Americans who've inquired about a heritage reissue, W123. But Mercedes makes more profit selling you a $48,000 C-Class every 7 years than one $155,000 car that lasts forever. The math of planned obsolescence wins every time. The E30 M3 wasn't just a car, it was BMW, proving that a practical compact sedan could also be a legitimate race car, built from 1986 to 1991 for homologation purposes. Only 17,970 were made worldwide. Today, clean examples sell for over $165,000. But what if BMW built a new one, exactly as pure as the original? The E30 M3 weighed just 2,650 pounds. No power steering on early models, no traction control, no stability management. Just you, a naturally aspirated 2.3-liter 4-cylinder and a manual transmission. Every input was mechanical, immediate, and honest. The steering told you exactly what the front wheels were doing. The throttle cable, an actual cable, delivered exactly what you demanded. Here's what killed cars like this: regulations and expectations. A modern E30 M3 would need to weigh at least 3,300 pounds just for safety structures. Mandatory stability control adds 33 pounds of sensors and actuators. The modern electrical architecture, required for crash notification and cybersecurity, adds another 66 pounds of wiring and modules. The original S14 engine, impossible today. It produced 195 horsepower, but would fail every modern emissions test. To make it EPA compliant, you'd need gasoline particulate filters, sophisticated injection systems, and cylinder deactivation. The engine would cost $38,000 just to manufacture. The original cost $9,000 in today's money. BMW actually studied this. In 2019, their Heritage division calculated the cost of a regulation-compliant E30M3 continuation model. The verdict: $200,000 production cost, $275,000 retail price minimum. They'd sell maybe 1,000 worldwide. Meanwhile, the modern M3, weighing nearly 4,000 pounds and full of electronics, sells 30,000 units annually at higher profit margins. But here's what BMW won't admit publicly. They're terrified of building a simple car again, because if they did, and it lasted 30 years like the E30, it would prove that all the complexity in modern cars is completely unnecessary. It would expose that the technology isn't for you, it's for them, for planned obsolescence, for subscription services, for data harvesting. In 1976, Volkswagen created something revolutionary, the Golf GTI. It wasn't the first hot hatch ever built, but it perfected the formula in ways nobody had before. Lightweight, 1,785 pounds. Simple engine, 1.6 liters. Fuel injection, 110 horsepower. Democratic pricing, affordable for working people. It created an entire segment that still dominates the market today. The MK1 GT. I had 37 switches and buttons total. Every single one had one function. The heating, 3 sliders, temperature, fan speed, direction. That's it. Perfect after 40 years. The modern Golf? 117 different controls, most hidden in touchscreen menus. According to Consumer Reports owner surveys, the infotainment system is the #1 warranty claim on modern Volkswagens. Let's expose the real economics. VW could build a MK1 GTI replica today. The platform exists. It's called MQB. Strip out the electronics, use analog gauges, mechanical controls. The production cost would actually be lower than a modern Golf, about $20,000 versus $24,000 for a standard Golf. But they can't sell it. Why? Because without the electronics, they lose recurring revenue. No software updates at $100 each. No subscription services for heated seats. Yes, that's real. No data to sell to insurance companies. A simple Golf GT would be more profitable per unit, but disaster for the business model. The market is desperate for this car. Specialty shops across America build new MK1 GTIs from restored shells with modern drivetrains. They charge $70,000 and have 2-year waiting lists. Volkswagen sees this. They know the demand exists. But admitting simple is better would undermine 20 years of progress propaganda. The W140 S-Class was the last Mercedes ever built without cost constraints imposed by accountants. Development took 10 years and $2.7 billion. Engineers were told to build the best car possible, period. The result was 1991's S-Class, a car so over-engineered that many consider it the greatest sedan ever built. Let me explain what over-engineering meant. The W140 had double-glazed windows, not for noise, but because they could. The doors closed with bank vault precision because they used aerospace-grade seals. The electrical system had backup circuits for backup circuits. One owner reported driving 60,000 miles with a failed alternator. The redundant systems kept working. Those 127 buttons I mentioned, each one was tested for 500,000 presses. Each had its own circuit, its own fuse, its own diagnostic code. If your seat heater failed, only your seat heater failed. Today's S-Class, one software crash can disable everything from navigation to climate control. And according to NHTSA data, the modern S-Class has been recalled 14 times between 2021 and 2025. To build a W140 today would require reversing 30 years of cost-cutting. The double-pane glass alone adds $9,000. The mechanical door locks, yes, mechanical, unhackable, eternal, would cost $13,000 to engineer for modern standards. The total, $420,000 production cost, meaning a retail price over $550,000. Mercedes knows wealthy buyers would pay this. Rolls-Royce and Bentley prove the ultra-luxury market exists, but Mercedes can't build it because it would expose their modern S-Class as what it is, a compromised cost-cut shadow of what Mercedes once meant. The W140 getting 30 years of reliable service, while the new S-Class gets recalled every 6 months? That comparison would destroy the brand. The original Mini, built from 1959 to 2000, was a packaging miracle that defied automotive conventions. At just 10 feet long and weighing only 1,400 pounds, it could carry 4 adults in reasonable comfort. It won the Monte Carlo Rally, it became British culture on wheels, and it did all this with 34 horsepower and a top speed of 75 miles per hour. The Mini proved that intelligent design beats brute force. The transverse engine layout, wheels pushed to the corners, minimal overhangs, every inch had purpose. The controls were hilariously simple. 3 gauges, 8 switches, 1 steering wheel. The heating was a valve that let engine heat into the cabin. Crude, but eternal. BMW bought Mini and turned it into everything the original wasn't. The modern Mini weighs 3,100 pounds, more than double. It's 13 feet long. Not Mini at all. It has 78 electronic control units. The base model costs $30,000 versus $12,000 inflation-adjusted for the original. Here's the scandal. BMW could build a true Mini successor, take their i3 carbon fiber technology, build a 1,300-pound city car, use the motorcycle engine from their R1250, 100 horsepower, bulletproof reliable, price it at $16,000 and still profit. The development cost, maybe $550 million, nothing for BMW. But they won't because the modern Mini is a goldmine of upselling. Customization options generate 35% profit margins. The Union Jack taillights, $900 for LED strips that cost $35 to make. A basic Mini configured with typical options reaches $44,000. That's the business model. Sell fake heritage at luxury prices. The original Audi Quattro from 1980 changed everything about performance cars. All-wheel drive in a performance car for the first time. Turbocharging brought to the masses. Rally success that transformed Audi from also ran to icon. It was complicated for its time, but brilliantly simple by today's standards. Mechanical everything. No computers deciding how to split torque. The Quattro's center differential was a masterpiece of mechanical engineering. It could be locked manually, giving the driver total control. The turbocharged 5-cylinder engine made unique sounds that became legendary. The whole car weighed just 2,840 pounds, despite the all-wheel drive system. Audi recently considered a Heritage Edition Quattro. The engineering study revealed devastating truths. That mechanical center diff, not permitted now. Stability control must be able to override driver inputs. The manual locking mechanism, illegal. Electronic control required for federal safety standards. The weight after adding mandatory safety systems, 3,640 pounds minimum. But the real tragedy is the 5-cylinder engine. Audi spent $50 million developing a modern 5-cylinder that meets emission standards. It works, but it needs a particulate filter that muffles the signature sound. It needs cylinder deactivation that ruins the rhythm. The character that defined the Quattro, gone. The theoretical modern Quattro would cost $160,000 to produce, sell for $220,000, and satisfy nobody. The originals are now worth $165,000 to $440,000 because people want the mechanical experience, not a computerized simulation. Audi knows this, but can't acknowledge that progress went backward. The Beetle was the most successful car design ever created. 21.5 million, built over 65 years of continuous production. The same basic design sold from 1938 to 2003. It became the hippie icon, the Mexican taxi, the global symbol of simplicity. Americans bought millions of them, and many are still running today. The Beetle's genius was reduction. Air-cooled engine, no radiator, no coolant, no water pump. Rear engine, no complex drive shaft. Body-on-frame construction meant easy repairs. 4 bolts held the fenders on. The entire engine could be removed in 20 minutes with basic tools. VW killed the original Beetle in 2003 and replaced it with the new Beetle, a Golf with retro styling. It was everything wrong with modern heritage cars. Front engine, water-cooled, zero serviceability. It failed and was replaced by another failure. VW gave up in 2019. But here's what VW discovered when they studied a true Beetle revival. It would sell millions. Their research showed demand for 400,000 units annually at $20,000. The profit per car would be $3,300. Terrible by modern standards, but $1.3 billion total profit. Shareholders said no. Why? Because selling a simple, eternal car would cannibalize sales of complex, disposable cars with higher margins. The Mexico factory that built Beetles until 2003 still exists. The tooling was preserved. VW could restart production tomorrow for about $220 million investment. They'd recoup it in 6 months. But they won't, because it would prove that cars peaked in simplicity decades ago. The Honda CRX Psy from 1988 to 1991 was driving purity perfected in a package Americans could actually afford. It weighed just 2,180 pounds. The 1.6-liter VTEC engine made 108 horsepower and revved to the heavens. No power steering, no ABS, no traction control, just perfect weight distribution, telepathic steering, and the most communicative chassis Honda ever built. It taught a generation of Americans how to really drive. The CRX had 6 gauges and minimal switches. Everything was where you expected it. The driving position was perfect because humans designed it, not computers. The shifter throw was short and mechanical. The clutch talked to you. Every input had immediate, honest feedback. Honda has tried multiple times to recapture the CRX magic. The Del Sol was too heavy. The CRZ was numb. The Civic Si keeps getting bigger and more electronic. Each generation got further from what made the CRX special. The current Civic Si, it's a good car, but it weighs 3,000 pounds and costs $30,000. Honda engineers have reportedly studied building a CRX Heritage Edition. Strip a Civic to 2,400 pounds. Use a naturally aspirated, high-revving engine without turbo lag, mechanical steering, manual transmission only. The cost? They could build it for $24,000, sell for $35,000 profitably. Marketing killed it. They said young buyers wouldn't understand it, and old buyers would compare it to used CRXs selling for $25,000 in good condition. But the real reason Honda makes more money selling one $45,000 Type R than 3 simple CRX. The spreadsheet wins, driving loses. The Volvo 240, produced from 1974 to 1993, was safety before safety was legally mandatory. Volvo gave away their 3-point seatbelt patent to save lives rather than profit from it. They pioneered crumple zones that are now industry standard. The 240 was built to protect families, and it did, for decades. Many have passed 300,000 miles. Some have exceeded 600,000. The 240's construction was deliberate overkill. The B230F engine was understressed, making 114 horsepower from 2.3 liters. It could have made 200, but Volvo wanted it to last forever. The body used more steel than necessary. The bumpers could withstand 5 miles per hour impacts with 0 damage. Modern cars suffer $5,500 of sensor damage at 2 miles per hour. Volvo considered a 240 Tribute Edition in 2020 for their anniversary. The study was shocking. To build a 240 with modern safety would require adding only $3,300 of equipment. The original was that far ahead. But to meet emissions, $16,500. To add mandatory electronics, $8,800. Total production cost, $50,000. That's still reasonable. Volvo could sell a modern 240 for $66,000 and profit. The XC90 proves people will pay Volvo prices, but here's why they won't. The 240 would last 30 years, and Volvo's business model requires you to lease a new one every 3 years. They literally can't afford to build cars that good anymore. The Alfa Romeo Milano from 1985 to 1992 was the last true Alfa Romeo sold in America. Rear-wheel drive, perfect 50-50 weight distribution, transaxle transmission mounted at the rear, inboard rear brakes. It was engineering poetry with an Italian accent. The twin-spark engine sounded like heaven and required worship-level maintenance. The Milano had character flaws that became features. The driving position was odd but perfect once learned. The dashboard was a scattered constellation of beautiful gauges. The build quality varied. Monday cars were terrible. Wednesday cars were perfect. But every single one had soul. Alfa Romeo is now part of Stellantis. building platform-shared crossovers. The Giulia was supposed to revive the spirit, but got watered down by committees. An internal proposal for a Milano tribute was created in 2021, rear-drive platform from the Giulia, naturally aspirated V6, manual transmission only, analog gauges. The business case was solid, $38,000 production cost, $60,000 retail, projected 10,000 annual sales. That's $220 million profit, but Stellantis killed it because it would outsell the $77,000 Giulia Quadrifoglio and embarrass the entire modern lineup by being more desirable while simpler. Here's what the automotive industry doesn't want you to understand. They could build every single one of these cars tomorrow if they wanted to. The technology exists. The demand exists. The profit margins would be acceptable. But three forces prevent it, and they're darker than you think. First, shareholders demand growth, not sustainability. A car that lasts 30 years is a disaster for quarterly earnings. The Mercedes W140 that refuses to die, that's a nightmare scenario for modern business. They need you buying or leasing every 3 to 5 years. Planned obsolescence isn't a conspiracy theory. It's the business model. Second, regulations written by lobbyists make simplicity illegal. You can't build a car without dozens of different electronic nannies. Federal law mandates backup cameras, stability control, tire pressure monitoring. Each system adds cost, weight, and failure points. But here's the secret. Car manufacturers lobbied for these regulations because they create barriers to entry and force complexity that justifies higher prices. Third, and most sinister, data harvesting. Your modern car generates 25 gigabytes of data per hour. Location, speed, acceleration, braking, even eye movement and heart rate in some premium models. This data is worth billions. A simple car with mechanical controls generates no data. That's lost revenue worth more than the car sale itself. Tesla showed the industry that cars are now software platforms. Every manufacturer followed. The BMW heated seat subscription that caused outrage? That's the future. You won't own features, you'll rent them. And when the car is 10 years old and BMW stops supporting the software, it becomes worthless. Forced obsolescence through software abandonment. The cars we've discussed today represent more than nostalgia. They represent a fork in the road where the industry chose profit over people, complexity over reliability, surveillance over privacy. Every modern car is a compromise between what engineers could build and what accountants will allow. But there's hope, and it comes from an unexpected place: China. Companies like BYD and others are building simple, affordable cars because their massive domestic market demands it. If Chinese manufacturers bring that philosophy to America, and they're actively trying to do so, it could force domestic and European manufacturers to remember what cars are supposed to be: tools for freedom, not subscription services designed to extract recurring revenue. The used market tells the truth about what buyers actually value. A 1990 Mercedes W140 in good condition costs more than a 2015 C-Class. A clean Honda CRX SE in good condition sells for more than a brand new Civic. The market is screaming that we went backward as an industry, but the manufacturers pretend not to hear. Those 10 cars we desperately want back, they're never coming back to production, not because we can't build them, but because building them would expose the lie of modern automotive progress. Every touchscreen that replaces buttons, every sensor that fails after warranty, every software update that breaks something that worked, it's all intentional. The automotive industry discovered they make more money selling you complexity that breaks than simplicity that lasts a lifetime. They make more money harvesting your data than selling you a car. They make more money on finance and subscriptions than manufacturing. Your grandfather's Mercedes that still runs perfectly after 40 years isn't a miracle. It's what happens when engineers are allowed to engineer instead of being overruled by MBAs with spreadsheets. The tragedy isn't that we can't build these cars anymore. The tragedy is that we choose not to. But you have power as a consumer. Every time someone buys a 30-year-old W140 instead of a new car, it's a vote for quality over quarterly earnings. Every restored CRX Sci is a middle finger to the concept of planned obsolescence. The used market is the only honest market left, and it's sending a clear message. We want our cars back. The industry will eventually listen to consumers, not because they want to, but because they'll have to in order to survive. When Chinese manufacturers start selling simple, reliable cars at reasonable prices in America, domestic and European manufacturers will suddenly discover that simplicity is possible again. But until that day comes, protect those old cars. Maintain them properly, cherish them, because they're not just machines. They're tangible reminders of when the automotive industry still had a soul and cared about building things that lasted.